Your journey has been an interesting one up to here. You've questioned so much more than those around you. You've even questioned yourself as to how you could have grown into these thoughts. Am I crazy? When did I begin to think differently? Why do people in general appear so limited in their thought process? Rest assured, you are not alone. The world is slowly waking up to what you already know inside, yet can't quite verbalize. Welcome to the Spiritual Dope Podcast, the show that answers the questions you never even knew to ask, but needed the answers to. Questions about you, this world, the people in it. Most importantly, how do I proceed now moving forward? We don't claim to have all the answers, but we sure do love living in the question. Time for another hit of Spiritual Dope with your host, Brandon Henley. Let's get right into today's episode.
Hey there, Spiritual Dope. I am on here today with Erin McCullough. She is a thought leader, an in-demand speaker, and an international teacher that helps people create impenetrable joy so that they can be calm, have peace of mind, and meaning in their life now. Erin had an anxiety disorder that had her holed up in her home for nearly a year. Through that experience, she learned how and why that happened and developed strategies to overcoming and preventing it, which is what she now teaches. Erin vowed that when she found solutions to overcoming and preventing anxiety, she would do whatever she could to make sure that no one had that experience. So that has been her mission. Erin spent a decade studying the mind-body connection, visualization, and ways to still the mind. Over the decades, she's created simple strategies to overcoming and preventing anxiety, stress, worry, and overwhelm so that all her clients live a life intentionally in joy. She's been an entrepreneur for 21 years and consulting businesses and business leaders for 16 years. If you question who you are and what you're meant to be doing in this life, let Erin help you discover your own path to joy. Erin, thanks for working through the technical difficulties. As I told you, I'm working on this newer platform. But thanks for joining today. How you doing?
Oh my gosh, thanks for having me. I'm wonderful.
Oh,
how are you?
Yeah, never been better. My whole life has led up to this point. So, here we are. Here we are. So I'd like to start these off with the idea that we are indeed all sources. We were talking about a little bit before we got started here, that we are all our source and that the universe speaks through us. And that right now in this moment, the universe is speaking through you to one of the listeners today. What do you have to tell that listener?
Well, first and foremost, I believe it is our birthright to be predominantly in joy all day, every day. And if that's not the experience you're having, then keep listening. We're going to talk about all the things, strategies, and why we're here, what we're meant to be doing, all the things.
All the things. I love that you kind of chose joy. I had to go out and grab my joy mug.
Oh, nice.
Right. It's actually pretty much one of my favorite mugs, right? Is the idea of what you kind of see, first thing I pick up and I carry around, I get to see the word joy everywhere I go when I'm drinking out of the mug. So definitely enjoy the word joy, and glad that we have the opportunity to talk about it. And I'm also going to be very honest. Before I went and I checked you out a little bit more, I was like, well, what kind of fit is this? Right? What kind of fit is this? Because, being, more of a thought leader and all this other stuff, I was like, what's the spirituality fit? And so in your mind though, the work that you do, the spiritual, the personal development is spirituality work. Is that right? Is that fair?
Yeah. 100%.
Well, let's talk about the journey, right? Let's talk about breaking through anxiety. Let's talk about how you found yourself in an anxious position and kind of some of the things that you did to work your way through it.
Awesome. So, my story has kind of three defining moments, if you will. The first started with the anxiety disorder that you spoke about. It actually came about in talk therapy. I was going to a couples group counseling with my honey at the time. And in that first session, I had a panic attack, and I never had one before. So I had no idea what it was. And the counselor picked up on it right away. She explained all, what it was. And, or she told me what it was. She didn't really exactly explain what it was. I figured that out later, but she told me that's what was happening. And from there, she said, something's obviously coming up for you. Would you like to do some individual work? And in that individual work, I was telling my trauma story over and over and over again. And what my body decided to do was put up the defense mechanism of anxiety. And so it got so bad that, as you said, I hold myself up in my home. It wasn't an overnight thing. It happened gradually. Panic attacks, more panic attacks. Then, I had one while I was running, and I was training for a race at the time. And so then I felt like I couldn't run anymore, at least temporarily. And so I stopped running, and then I stopped teaching. I was a teacher at the time. And so it happens that way, slowly. It's not just one, wake up and no can do. After about 9 months of that, she referred me to a homeopathic psychiatrist who gave me a remedy after a 3-hour interview that in 20 minutes basically cured me from the experience of anxiety. That's the physical chemical piece, right? And I thought, wow, I have a new lease on life. I can go and do all these things. But because of that experience, I was afraid, right? So I decided to move to Hawaii and move to a small town and have a simpler life, right? Thinking that, then I would never get triggered and I would just live my life happily ever after in paradise. And unfortunately, while the chemistry piece was handled, the mental, emotional, spiritual piece, not so much. And so I was still there. And so in that simpler life, of course, I created anxiety, stress, and all that. So I moved to Hawaii immediately. In the first 24 hours, I started a business and I had a client. Within 18 months, I had 20 employees, multiple 6-figure contracts, and I was on my way to stress and anxiety. And the second thing that happened that really rocked me to my core was 10 years into my business of just being frantic and crazy stressed all the time, a client called in the morning. She was upset, and I would just get so frantic about clients complaining. I got in my car, raced over to a friend's house, backed into her driveway to drop my daughter off, and I sideswiped her husband's car or his truck with my car. And come to find out later when I came to pick up my daughter that her husband was under the truck working on it while I hit it, and he thought it was going to land on him. And that just rocked me to my core. I thought, this is ridiculous. Like, this is no life, running around like a crazy person all the time. And so then I dove, into self-development, got involved with a seminar company, did all their seminars, staffed for them, and started to see that there was a different way to be in this world, and started to make some changes that were having an impact on my life and other people around me. And then about 5 years later, I found myself in the middle of a divorce. And for whatever reason, it just leveled me. I was in a dark place, and I thought, I'd spent tens of thousands of dollars on seminars, reading all the books, trying to do this other life, but I didn't really have any legit strategies to doing life differently. So then a series of things happened. I picked up the book, maybe you've heard of it, A Course in Miracles, and was about a month into reading. It's a daily passage for about a year, 365 passages. And nothing, I was kind of like, this is interesting, but not really rocking my world. Then all of a sudden, month 2, this crazy thing happened where the words started like popping off the page. It was like, the path is joy. The answer is joy. It was joy, joy, joy. And I was like, finally, after a couple of weeks of that, I was like literally threw my hands up in the air. I was like, I got the answer. How do I get there? And a series of things happened. I got an email from a gentleman I met. He was teaching a seminar in Oahu, and I thought, I'll fly over for that. I have no idea what it is. Doesn't matter. Just need something positive. And I went, and it was a day-long seminar on a visualization process that he teaches. And I was so excited by it. I came home and I started using it immediately. Called up my broker who had my business for sale for like 9 months with no bites. And I was like, look, I just want to let you know my business is going to sell by the end of the month, and there's going to be a bidding war. And he was like, okay. And lo and behold, a week later, that's exactly what happened. And then I went back and trained this gentleman that I had gone to that seminar. He was having a seminar to train people to teach his main seminar. And I went and trained for a week. I came home, put on my first seminar, and I stood in front of this group of people, and I ditched my notes 5 minutes in because I had this crazy experience where like everything that I had ever learned, all of my life experience, everything I'd ever read just came together like at one moment. I went, whoa, like this is what I'm supposed to do. Like I'm supposed to teach people how to find their joy, cultivate it daily, and live the life that they're meant to be living now without waiting for all the things or the, whatever they think they need to have in order to have that. Like that's available now. And I happened to also during that few week period meet the love of my life in these very random circumstances, which I don't believe in random anymore. And so it just all lined up, and that's what I've been doing for the last almost 4 years.
That's awesome. I mean, and it's interesting, right, that you kind of came out of from what I gather, was more of a business oriented kind of thing versus this pursuit of joy, right? Or that you're doing now. And I think that I heard you say on another podcast that, maybe some of this is woo, but if it is woo, it's working out for you and you're okay with it, right?
I mean, that's the thing. People always say, oh, that's kind of woo woo for me. And I'm like, I'm looking at woo woo people. They look pretty happy is all I can say.
Right, right. Yeah.
Might be something to it.
It's pretty amazing. The idea too of just trying some of these things out for the first time. You go into it very skeptical, right? This vision process that you're doing, that you're thinking about, while it seems pretty cool, but then you go and you try it, and then things start working out, right? I mean, talk to me a little bit about that. So how did that come and like kind of manifest itself? What was some of your initial reactions when you saw? Were you even calling it the universe then? What were you calling it? Well, like, what was your, kind of, how was that for you?
It's kind of crazy because, how it's like life. I mean, again, it's like life unfolds slowly and you don't recognize exactly what's going on until you look back and go, whoa, like, look at all these things that happen. That's crazy. It took me a while to even recognize how much I knew that I was feeling better. That I knew. And honestly, I thought I knew what joy was. I thought I knew what happiness was. The thing was I was on this like roller coaster ride of things, right? It was just like I was so 100% bought into the idea that if I had all the things, a stack of cash and the house and the car and the successful business and all the things that we're told is going to make us be happy. I had all those things and I was so miserable,
right.
But I didn't even know that it was possible to experience joy. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah. I really just didn't even know what was available.
So I think it's really interesting that you bring it up, right? I think there's a tale of two cities type of thing where you went and you got all these things and you did all the things because this is what we're taught. But it's been my experience is like, hey, go do all these things because this is what you're taught, right? And you're not doing it maybe with the same intent that some of these other people are doing it, right? You're doing it to amass and acquire and to be happy and to have status versus what you're doing now, which is to implement purpose, intent, and service, right? And the outcome that you're headed towards now, right? If you haven't, I'm sure you've already achieved it. I mean, listen, if you landed in Hawaii and had some clients on the first day and, whatever, amass pretty quick like that, whatever it is that you're doing right now, I'm assuming is successful in one way or another, right? But now it's aligned to who you are with your purpose, and there's fulfillment and joy in that, and the rest of it just kind of comes naturally, right? It comes as a byproduct of that intent and that purpose versus if you could compare it to the way that you were running life before, right? You were miserable. You were like, and anxious and, knocking people's trucks over on them. Right. and now like you're doing maybe the same amount of work. I don't know, but what's the effort feel like compared to what the effort felt like before?
I mean, you hit it right on the head. Like I am 100% in service of people and myself. And while that may sound selfish, it's kind of where you got to be when you're in service to people in this way, and it's a whole different experience. Before it just felt like I was grinding all the time, like it took all these things in order to make success. Like I really, there are these ideas that we have from a young age, success looks like this formula. It's right. It's like, hard work plus luck, right? Like this, formula of success. And I was 100% bought into that too. And now it's not like that. It's like, it doesn't seem like work. It's not a 4-letter word anymore for me. It's 100% like when I give to clients, I give to myself. Like it's such a win-win. Whereas I definitely didn't function that way in my life before, 100%. And now it's like, while I still have to negotiate, time, balance the things out in my life, this never feels like something I have to do. Like I'm excited to do it all the time.
Yeah.
I feel called to share what I know because it's had such a profound impact on my life.
I think it's interesting too how, on your first seminar, you kind of tossed all the notes to the side and everything you ever knew kind of fell into this framework, right? And you were able to just let it freely flow, right? I mean, what looking back, what would you say happened there?
Oh, I was, I think we're guided all the time. I think we have support all the time from all the things, universe, energy in general, I mean, scientifically speaking, energy cannot be destroyed. So every person who's lived, their energy is here too, and, that's why people talk to loved ones that have passed and, like the energy is still here. It exists. So why not tap into those things? I think, it happens to me all the time. And I'm not going to lie, it was freaky, because it's, for somebody who's like a recovered control freak, to be standing in front of a bunch of people and all of a sudden just free flowing.
Right.
And not to say it was just random all over the place. I still stuck to, we had a workbook and things, but to go off the notes, I still do that.
Mm.
And I just, and I recognize, I mean, even sometimes when I'm on podcasts, like I'll wake up in the middle of it and go, oh, like I wouldn't say it's, I don't want to say channeling, but it's like, it's taking energy that exists. Like what I tell people and how I'm in service to people and the information that I share with people, like it's not new to me. Like I didn't make this stuff up.
Right.
This is a relearning, right? And when I'm teaching, I see it in the students. It's like they can hear me on a deep level, even if they're not consciously aware of what I'm saying. They're feeling it on a deep level. And that's coming from not me, I mean, I hear it and I can disseminate the information and distill it down, but it's exists. We're all connected to it in one way or another.
100% right. Truth resonates. And that's, kind of that's the experience when you're talking to somebody else and you're in a room with these people and you're having a truth session. I don't know what the hell you call them, right? Truth is just kind of coming through you and you're like, I don't even know. I didn't even know I could do that. Right. Yeah. But then the rest of the room is resonating with you. And to me, that's, kind of what it sounds like is happening. And, call it channeling. It's funny too, because like we still have our limitations on what we'll call it. Right. Like, I don't know that I don't know that I call it channeling. I don't know, whatever, but what you're doing is you're at least letting yourself open to it, whatever it is to come through and to and through you. right? As a kind of a receiver, translator, as it were.
That's it. Receiver for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, and I think we all have that ability. And
it's innate. I mean, it's innate, right?
Yeah.
And you know, so I mean, I don't know how old your kids are. You know, I've got my 9-year-old, and it's so and my older child too, 11. But you know, it's so obvious just how like innately in tuned the children are, right? As it is, and then you can kind of watch it literally be kind of like, I don't want to say brainwashed, but brainwashed out of them, right? Like, you know, just kind of have those senses dulled and like, you know, go through like this other thing. And you just kind of watch it. You're like, wow. It's crazy because we go through this relearning experience later in life. Are you an Alan Watts fan?
I don't know who that is.
Oh my gosh. Come on now. All right.
I gotta write
Alan
that
Watts.
down. Alan Watts?
Yeah. Alan Watts. You know, he's a kind of philosopher, made, you know, popularized Zen Buddhism in the West, like in the 60s, 70s, right? English guy, you'll really enjoy him. One of the things that he talks about, those, it's like we're like salted beef, right? We get all salted, and you gotta desalinate that beef, and then you're back to your natural state at a certain point, and that's, again, sounds to me kind of like the way you're going, right? You're feeling into it. What was the cure? I mean, because you had the homeopathic guy, right? Comes and gives you the cure. What was it? Do you recall? Was it like a miracle pill? You know, help me out here.
No. Well, homeopathy is so interesting. It's so distilled down, the amount of whatever the substance is.
Mm-hmm.
They come in. Have you ever taken it before? That's like little
Tinctures,
sugar tablet. They're little pills.
I have no idea. Yeah, no.
Tiny little granules, and they taste like sugar.
Mm-hmm.
And they have just, I mean, it's almost like they have essence of the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it really is for the purpose of sort of righting your own self, right? So you introduce it to the body, and the body goes, oh, that's right. We used to function fairly normally in this state. Here's the thing that I need. And interestingly enough, when she gave me the remedy, she told me what it was called, and she said, I don't want you to research it. And this is pre-internet. It's not pre-internet, but it was definitely, internet was not a thing, really. This was like 99.
There was no Google.
Yeah, it was not. There was no verb called Google it.
Right.
So, you know, she was just like, I don't want you to research this, and, you know, just see what happens or whatever. And, you know, and I mean, I almost don't even want to say what it is, because I don't want people with anxiety to think that that's the cure-all. It's not the cure-all. It was just the thing that made me feel better enough to get on the path to recognizing that the work is internal. It's mental, emotional, spiritual, and then the body follows.
It's so interesting though, right? Because we believe the other way around, right? Because we see the things that everybody's doing, but we can't see that inner work. We can't see how they're thinking, functioning, or directing themselves internally to get to that point. So we're like, all right, well, I'm just going to go do all those same things, right? And it doesn't work out, right? Because we're not aligning all three of those pieces of ourselves together. We're just like, we're hammering on one at a time, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, you see people, they have, you know, I work with a lot of people who have cancer and other diseases, because that's mental, emotional, spiritual too. I believe we're 3 equal parts, you know, mind, body, spirit. And if any of those are out of alignment or out of balance, it's going to show up in the other ones, right? In a negative way, or in a not wanted way.
Right.
And often we can skip past mental and spiritual, right? We have all kinds of ways to not feel and acknowledge. And, you know, the obvious ones are drugs and alcohol. The less obvious ones are things like being super busy, not ever having any stillness in our life, you know.
Right.
being helicopter parents, you know,
It's tough.
I mean, we spend all day, every day trying not to feel anything. And, you know, and so you can imagine, and we've done it from a young age. Like, it's not really our fault. It's, you know, we've grown up to this idea that we're not supposed to have emotions. We're not supposed to feel those things. Only very controlled and in very specific ways, depending on the environment, you know, like can't cry in a business meeting, you know, can't, you know,
are you crying?
Try not to lose it. There's no crying in baseball.
You know, I you know, my first go around like in the podcast realm and coaching space was fatherhood, and a big point of what you're saying there is especially as Western civilization men, emotions. Come on now, you know, you can't. That's a brilliant question too, because we don't know. One of the tools that I use often is the Pluchick wheel. Right, just has the emotions kind of listed out. I hand it to my clients. I'm like, you know, go through it. You know, take a look at this every day. If you don't know what this one means, or even if you think that you do, go double check the definition of that and just see kind of how you're applying it in your life and how you can use it to, you know, acknowledge your situation. Because I was like 40 or something. I didn't know. I was like, you know what? Because I had a coaching friend. He goes, Brandon, I'm not hearing anything emotional, or there's nothing emotional. I was like, huh, let me go check that out. And I was like,
well, I mean, unfortunately, our society, especially for men, like, you're really only allowed anger as the only like standout emotion, you know?
Yeah. It's tragic.
But that's changing slowly, as all things.
Well, I mean, and I, you know, I like to call kind of where we are right now in whatever culture, like a hippie 2.0 situation. Right. Right. We're kind of like in a hippie 2.0 situation. We're like, okay, like maybe if we don't do it with all the drugs, it'll work out better this time. Right. Like, you know, cut it out on like the illegal substances, and, you know, we can still get to this place mentally and spiritually. Right. And since we're seeing that, there's the actual benefits are being seen and heard. And I think that the pandemic had such a huge influence because nobody was spared. Right. If anything good came out of it,
leveled everything.
Right. It's like level set everything. So for the, you know, for the CEO or a business leader that could normally like hop on a plane and do everything that like his employees couldn't, he was stuck at home too with the kids, having to deal with the Zoom meetings. He wasn't getting a free ride out of it. Right. And so her mental health was impacted as well. And they're like, oh shit, everybody's going through this. We better do something. Right. So we see, right. I mean, so I think there's some benefit out of this whole COVID situation to
huge.
Right. The mental health space of people, spaces, places, and things. So, if I am coming to you and I am like the client type I am is who you were before you got to this joy spot, right? I've got success. I'm not like I'm not a woo-woo kind of guy. My calendar's, you know, tight and all this stuff. What are some of the first things that we're gonna do together?
First, we're going to acknowledge and begin to make some separation between the story that's been running your life. You know, the story of all the rainbows and sunshine. No, the story of all the, you know, the yucky, the unfair, the unjust, the abuse, trauma, all those things. Not for the purpose of wallowing in and, you know, just to acknowledge where we started and maybe what's affecting some of the ways that we see this world, how we perceive people and circumstances. And then take that story and recognize it for what it is, the gift that it has been and will continue to be in terms of showing us where healing and growth can take place. And, you know, less about all the things, all the details in terms of, you know, who and what happened and all of those things. It's really more about what did you decide about you because of that story? And those are the beliefs. And then when we recognize some of those beliefs, then we can understand that, that's been playing out in the background. That's the wallpaper, so to speak, of our lives, and where we make decisions from. And a lot of the decisions are fantastic. We need not mess with those. But the ones that aren't serving the future that we want to create, those are the ones we want to take a closer look at. And so then from there, I have people do a day. I have them write out a narrative of the day in the life of everything they ever wanted to create in their life, all outcome based, all the feels, touch, taste, see, smell, the whole deal. So exciting, like literally from moment wake up until moment go to sleep, one day with everything in it, all the people, all the circumstances, all the outcomes. And then they use that in a visualization. And they start their day, because that's where I found my joy, was in that visualization, understanding a day in the life. Now, is it about manifesting? Not exactly. It's really about elevating the emotional experience, because you have that at your disposal at all times. And so we learn that our body doesn't forget things. So when I'm in my visualization in the morning, like, my arms are in the air. I'm like super excited. I'm like, yes, that just happened. And then, yes, that happened too. And I mean, tears of joy streaming down my face. I mean, it's all the things. I'm 100% in on every level. I've raised my emotional experience. And then, like I said, the body doesn't forget. So when you have that experience, you can recall it at any time. So when you're going throughout your day, things start to go south, you can take a moment, close your eyes, put yourself back into that moment, refocus, and move on, versus what most people do is go, oh, this thing's not working out. And then there's all these other things that aren't working out. There's that thing. And then there's this other thing I didn't like. And then this other person. And then, and so, you just got to the brain. It loves to do the same stuff over and over again and act like it's new. Yeah. And it's not.
I mean, I think the idea of the brain, right? It likes to be an efficient piece of machinery, right? Consumes so much energy, the more efficient it can be. And so let's just keep doing this thing, because this is, hasn't killed us in the past. Right?
Exactly.
If we just keep doing this, we won't die. We may not be enjoying our lives, but it hasn't killed us before. So I enjoy the visualization, and I think that there's a big piece of what you're saying there, that a lot of people, when you're doing these exercises, don't hammer home, I think, quite enough. And that's something I think you're touching on, is the idea of the feels, right? So my guess is that it's kind of a writing in the present tense exercise, right?
Yeah, preferably, again, it's outcome based. Mm-hmm. So you want to say it in gratitude, right? Because that's high vibration. It's, I'm so grateful that, all these things are happening in my life, as though they've happened already, as though they exist in the now.
Right.
And they will in your visualization. They exist as already taken place and done deal.
Right. And I think that the idea is that, I'm just stealing your words now, because I heard you say them earlier today. The idea is that, why don't you give us the idea of that, right? So if I can feel it right now, then what's that doing for me?
Yeah, that's creating. So I can't tell you how to get all the things. I mean, I think, for me, they've come by being in that elevated state. And so, what I help with is changing the experience of life, and I think that's a heck of a lot more important than amassing things. If I could show you how to change your experience in your life to joy right now by doing this visualization, that seems more valuable to me than, telling you how to make 6 figures, 7 figures, whatever, to me. Other people, they have other ideas, and that's wonderful. And I don't claim to be able to help with those things, but I know how to find joy, and I know how to cultivate it so that you can have that experience. And that's the first step, is to recognize that you are responsible for your experience. And when you know this, not in a like fault, blame, shame kind of a way, in an empowering way, then you can just choose and choose and choose. Just keep choosing the thing that makes you feel good now. It doesn't change anything. Have goals, do all the other stuff too. That's amazing. But given that we only have this moment here guaranteed, why not make this one enjoyable,
Yeah, no, agreed, agreed. And if I'm a law of attraction guy, if I'm in that space, right, this is how I would kind of liken it. Would And I don't know who it is. There's plenty of them out there. That's like, happiness doesn't kind of come later; it comes now, right? And if you can be happy now in whatever the circumstance, like you're talking about, then you can make that choice again, like you're talking about, all the time. You can find joy all the time in anything. And all you've got to do is, again, like you're saying, if I go through the morning and I had this visualization, I'm like, well, I'm feeling the feels. It's all there for me. Everything's great. And then later in the day, I'm not so feeling the feels. And I'm like, well, wait a second. Early in the day, I was feeling the feels. And this was like that kind of anchor point, right? Let me get back to that for a second, because I created that moment for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Versus kind of letting something outside of me create that. It was me who did that, creator of all these things. Then here I am. I'm always like kind of high vibing. I'm always like buzzing, right? And then you're basically sending that out into the universe, right? Like just kind of this high vibe. And if we act as if the universe is a force multiplier, right? And we know that like anything you throw out there is coming back at you. You're like, well, I better stop throwing monkey poo, right? Like, and start throwing some things that I could really use in my life and that I want in my life. And then, and visualize that and see it, feel it, and release it, right? I think that's important too, is kind of just like, release it and not hang on to the idea that, that it has to happen, right? You're talking about the people that are like, well, Erin, I tried this for 3 days and it didn't show up. My life did not change the way you said it was. And I've been doing all the things you tell me to do. But I mean, the idea again is to go through those feels, have them, do the visualization, and release it, because again, you're creating your own space, place, and time in that space. Is that right?
Yeah, and I got two things to say about that.
Mm-hmm.
One is I want to talk about the difference between happiness, this idea of happiness, and joy, because they're different.
Mm-hmm.
And I forgot what the other one was, but I'll talk with the happiness and the joy one first.
Start with that one. The rest will come.
Right. So to me, the difference between happiness and joy is that happiness is fleeting, right? It's, you get the new car, it's amazing. Eventually it's just a car, right? It gets you from A to B. And this game of, getting the things to make you feel good, it feels good for like this amount of time, right? And I only know that because I did all those things. I had the houses and the cars and the successful business and the time flexibility, all the things that everybody would want. And I literally kept like going over finish lines and going, yay, hooray, I'm happy right now. And then like when I was doing triathlons and stuff, I would go across the finish line. I would go home after celebrating for like 5 minutes. I mean, maybe like half hour or whatever. Go home and find another race that I could either crush my time in that was longer or harder, whatever. Like there was no end to it. Like I couldn't win that race ever. Joy, on the other hand, encompasses some of the, the exuberance and all of that. Not always, but it can include those. But it also has these nuances of like stillness and peace of mind, which is the not thinking all the time thing, or overthinking, and calm, right? And so those nuances are available and so rich. They're things I didn't know existed. Maybe I'd heard those words before, but I didn't really understand them on a deep level, and so those differences are important, because the one you can't win at. So yeah, get all the things and be super abundant in all the ways. Just recognize that the journey inside is the one that has purpose and meaning. The one on the outside where we collect things, those are super cool and fun too. They just don't, fill you up as a human.
I love it. I think that those are important distinctions, right? Happiness, quick and fleeting, right? And joy is a little bit more kind of like a long lasting coal and ember of warmth, right?
Yeah,
Type of
it's a
thing.
state of being. Yeah, for sure.
So let me see here. Two things. So I liken this, what we're doing here is like spiritual speed dating, right? Like somebody's going to tune in. They're like, I'm looking for my next spiritual date, right? And Erin, this could be you. So I'm going to ask you at least one kind of, question is that, let me see here. Where are we at? Why are so many people depressed?
Okay, so call it depression, call it anxiety, call it whatever you want, any low level experience, which is anything that doesn't feel good, stress, overwhelm, worry, all those lovely words, they're the same thing. They are the experience of the human wanting to control people and circumstances to fit in how they want them to show up, or they don't feel good. And the unconscious recognition at the same time that it is impossible to control people and circumstances and events to fit into your agenda. And so you can see where those two things butting up against each other would create some confusion. And so that confusion looks like anxiety, depression, we have this need. We touched on it before, the belief thing, right? So it's foundational. We made up, everybody has them. I've not met anybody yet who does not have these very core ones that are things like, I don't deserve, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, and they're all basically the same thing. Like, I'm not good enough. And so those are underlying all of our decisions and how we're feeling about ourselves. And then we interact with other people based on those beliefs. We had decided what's right and wrong. So that's how people are supposed to show up for us and how circumstances are supposed to show up for us. And so we got into this habit, or we learned this piece about when this person says something or the circumstance doesn't turn out how I want, then somehow it's their fault, right? So it's that person said something and they're rude. Instead of that person said something, triggered something in me that did not feel good. What is that? And why is that there? So then we look at that with wonder and curiosity and go, interesting, because I guarantee whatever's triggering you is not triggering me. So that's how you know it's all you.
It's true. If I was spiritually looking for a date, then I would say, hey, what's up? That was good. And I agree. I don't think there's a piece in there that I disagree with. So thank you. I think it's a great answer to it, right? Everybody's, still trying to control the outcomes in some way, shape, or form. And when they're not turning out the way they want them to, it's just, they're not accepting it, right? They don't see it. And I think that the idea of approaching these triggers with wonder and curiosity versus like kind of anger and angst is also really, why is this trigger still here? Right. So it makes sense, and I love it. So Erin, what else? I mean, I know that we talked about, you're doing the work that you're doing now, but you've got a new endeavor. What are you leaning into next?
Oh my gosh, so I'm so excited. I'm working with couples right now. I just finished doing my pilot course on partnership. And the reason I'm so excited about it is, well, first of all, I truly believe we are here for spiritual development, or you can call it self-development, or whatever you want to call it, consciousness. And when we recognize that that's why we're here, and that all these, challenges that come into our life are for the purpose of our growth, then we can, grow and heal and enjoy ourselves, right? Well, what happens when you bring two people together that understand that there's a process to healing and growing, and understand that same process in a way where, in couples, it's like, it's easy to see how escalation can happen, because it's like, especially when I just told you what's going on, right? So you said this thing, it made me feel bad, right? So instead of, we do this responsibly. So then we go, oh, you said this thing, I feel bad. There's nothing that you can do to make me feel better. I'm in charge of making me feel better. And then they can support you in that, right? And then instead of escalating, it's support, right? So it's not, you made me feel this way. It's, I feel this way and it doesn't feel good. And, support me in that, instead of like, get your beliefs and, the things in your life that aren't working out and escalate. It's like, no, this is mine. I own it. It doesn't feel good. And then the two of you work together in that capacity. And it's just amazing to watch couples. It's exponential, because not only is their relationship so much better, but think of the impact it will have on their kids, the rest of their family, when they can see two fully functioning adults coming together, helping support each other in their spiritual growth. It's phenomenal. And so
that sounds
started
awesome.
doing that.
That sounds awesome. So
fun.
Where does, who's your ideal client like in this space, right? So I think we got two types of the ideal clients. You got the partners ideal clients, and then you've got your standard practice clients. So who are they?
So ultimately, being an entrepreneur for like 21 or 2 years now, entrepreneurs like me for some reason, because I get their craziness. I understand that they are under the gun and responsible for a lot of things. And those typically, and leaders too, right? Just people who have a lot of responsibility, that, like to make all the things work out, like to control all the things. Those are the people that I end up working with, because I get them. I was them. And I still have nuances of that, of course, I'm still working on me and all the things. And then couples who are recognizing that, especially when you're coming together as maybe two, what do they call that? What is that called? The two families that come together that
families.
Have blended
there you
family.
go. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like, I've noticed quite a few couples that are interested in working with me that have that situation, because it's, it's already challenging being in partnership, but then you bring in the kids and it just escalates all the things. And so, any couple, of course, who's having an issue, wanting to communicate in a deeper way, or, deepen their relationship in some way, fantastic. And, it's super challenging when you're bringing in, other kids and into the mix and all that.
Yeah, it's hard enough with your own, right?
Yeah, no
for
kidding.
sure. So, and where then should I send people to come and find you if they are interested?
I think probably the best place to find me is on Instagram. My handle is Erin, ERIN MACLLC. And I post like a weekly video on some sort of strategy or something to think about. I put like inspirational memes in my stories. And my website URL is in the profile as well. It's a good way to interact with me. You can DM me, you can private message me or whatever. And I always, whenever I'm on a podcast, I offer a free, I call it step 1 to joy call to just get you on the path. Maybe I, disseminate the visualization process a little bit further so that you can get started on that in your life or whatever that looks like. And if afterwards you still want to hang out with me and learn more, then great. If you don't, no strings attached. It's just my way of being in service.
Awesome. Erin, thanks so much for being on today. Thanks for what you do, right? Being able to help people, make that transition from a bumble of nerves into something, a little bit more usable and functional in society. I mean, there's a reason why that's your calling. So thank you for being of service and doing that for everybody out there.
Oh my gosh, thanks for having me, and thanks for having these platforms. It's really important to have these conversations, giving people hope and strategies and just something to think about that's, positive. And I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.